Hey, good afternoon. Afternoon. Good afternoon. Ready to play ball? Right. Welcome to Lunch with Books. My name is Sean. Some people call me Babe. Just a few announcements before we start. Next week we have Scott McKenzie coming to talk about the birth of West Virginia. He is a Canadian. His book is published by WVU Press, so that should be interesting. The week after that we have an Iditarod competitor with her two dogs. She will be here right on our stage, so don't miss that one. That's the beginning of May. Today we're here to talk about, as you can see, baseball. But, oh, I forgot. These flyers are on your tables. If you have any corner store artifacts you don't mind loaning us, please get in touch with me because I'm putting that exhibit in very, 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 very soon. As soon as I'm done with this. And don't forget to play library bingo. So you get one of these upstairs, do various things in the library, and then submit it at the circulation desk, and you'll be able to win a fabulous prize. So, library bingo, give it a try. It's not gambling. There's no money involved. So if you're interested in local baseball, this is the book. There aren't many books. So all the research I did was by newspaper. But Bill Aiken did that. He was here several years ago. So this covers the Stogies and that whole era, all the way back to Town Ball, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So what we're going to do today is I'll do a brief, hopefully brief, sort of history, background of baseball locally, and then I'll let Steve take over because he actually was a baseball player, unlike me. What happened with me was the first time I went to try out for the Redbirds in Warwood, I struck out and I never went back. And then I tried out for football and I knocked down like 3 people and I thought, I was smart enough to realize that was my sport. So that's what I stuck with, but I've always loved baseball as a fan. Pirates, 1979, that was my team, Willie Stargell and those guys. So, yeah. And they're winning now, you know. We'll see. Okay, so. Oh, thanks, Kyle. How did it all start? Well, after the Civil War, a game called Town Ball was popular. Town Ball was a chaotic mess of a game that really had no rules. The way you got players out was you hit them with the ball. And how many on the side didn't matter. However many you had, you just split them up, and that was called Town Ball. Eventually that evolved into baseball, 2 words, and then the baseball we know today. So some of the early teams here in Wheeling, the Hunky Dories, the Stars, the Anchors, Resolute, United, Muscle, that's a good name, the Bachelors, the Belmont, the Osceola, Benedicts, East Wheeling Velocipedes, Baltics, Uniteds were South Wheeling, the Standards, that was one of the bigger ones, and then of course the Nailers, which eventually became the Stogies, also known as the Smokes. They played on fields all the way from South Wheeling, 47th Street, Pulaski, Tunnel Green in Goostown, Fulton Field, which became known as Bauer Park. I'll tell you more about that. B&O Grounds, Wheeling Island Commons, Small Box Field in Wheeling Island, State Fairgrounds, Belle Isle Park, Coney Island, the little island up in Warwood. They actually played baseball there at one time. Everywhere. It was so popular. League Park and Martins Ferry, Steubenville, all over the valley. So where was League Park? I became interested in that. Well, where would we be without the Sanborn insurance maps? Here it is. This is Etnaville, actually. And right up here is the grandstand and the bleachers. This picture's from 1915. But there's your ball field right between Zane Highway and, Broadway, South Broadway. Also, when you're researching, you find things that you don't expect, like this one announcement that there would be an electric light baseball game in Wheeling with the Gutmans playing the Wheelings, and then the Wheeling Steel and Iron team, a lot of teams named after companies. We're going to play the Wheeling Traveling Men. So, some more names for you. First great player from Wheeling was a man named John Glasscock. He was called Pebbly Jack. He played shortstop and really was one of the best shortstops that ever played. First West Virginian to play in the majors. He played for Cincinnati Red Stockings, St. Louis Maroons, Indianapolis Hoosiers. He was a good hitter. He hit .290 career, and he played barehanded in the shortstop. They called him Pebbly because he would go in the infield before the game and pick up all the pebbles so that he wouldn't get a ball kicked in a funny way or something. He credited that with his fielding. And Ozzie Smith's the one who surpassed most of his marks, so it took like 100 years. There he is. First true African-American player in the major leagues was this man, Moses Fleetwood Walker. I have his bobblehead up here. Actually, there was a man who played named William Edward White, who could pass for being white and never claimed his status as a black player, so he didn't take all the, sort of trash talk that Mr. Walker did, so he's actually credited with it. Played for the Syracuse Stars. Here he is with the Stars. And he, like I said, he was open about his race, and he faced a lot of torment for that. And he was finally the color barrier. He stopped playing because of the color barrier, and then number 42 was the one who broke that, Jackie Robinson. Another famous African-American player from the Valley was this man, King Solomon Saul White, born in Bellaire, Ohio, 1868. He could play catcher, he could play outfield, infield. He was very versatile. Here he is, here he was with Wheeling Green Stockings. And played for the Pittsburgh Keystones, lifetime average of .359. Founded the Philadelphia Giants, a Negro League team, and is best known for writing the history of colored baseball. He was put in the Hall of Fame in 2006. This is Jesse the Crab Burkett, so called because he fought with everybody. He was born in Wheeling, 1868. He could play pitcher. He won 27 games at the age of 19 for the Scranton Miners of the Central League. He was an outfielder for the New York Giants, Cleveland Spiders, St. Louis Browns. Batted .405, and then the next year, .410. So he's one of the few major leaguers to ever bat .400 2 years in a row. Hall of Fame, 1946. These are and semi-pro baseball is very popular here locally. These, of course, are the Stogies. This is the 1905 Central League Championship team. By 1909, they won another championship, and then they ran out of money. And by 1914, Wheeling did not have a professional team, so you had teams like the Bauers and the Macks, who we'll talk about in a minute, amateur teams who were excellent players who kind of took over. These are the Kindlebergers. A lot of teams were named after their owners. And this is one of my heroes. This is the Bauer squad. This is one of their juniors. The lady you see in the middle is Drusilla Bauer. And she sponsored teams from her grocery store on McCulloch Street here in East Wheeling. And some of the teams she sponsored when she got to be a senior team sponsor were among the best in the Valley. They would play barnstorming teams like the Homestead Grays from Pittsburgh. They played them 17 times, and they beat them 7 times, which is pretty good. And I did a blog post on her whole life story, which is rather interesting on Archiving Wheeling if you're interested in reading that. One of the best things about the era is that teams would challenge other teams in the newspaper. So you might see under amateur baseball in 1910, like the LaBelles challenged any 17-year-old team. The Benwood Juniors preferred for a game Sunday, and then you could answer through the newspaper or just show up or give them a call. And then trash talking, we think of it as a new invention, because of the women's NCAA basketball tournament. But these ads from 1913 prove otherwise. This one says, the Bauers Jr. asked why the W.H. Pauls did not show up Sunday at Fulton. They must be afraid of losing their reputation. You know what I mean? And then in 1911, the Glenlaw Juniors challenged the Noltes, saying, if you fellows are afraid to play us, shut up. You've only defeated us once, but you can't do it again. And that's 1911 trash talk. Bauers played the Homestead Grays, the Negro League team. So the Grays played all over the valley, and they had a rivalry with the McConkeys. That's the McConkey Monument at Belle Isle Park on the island, known as the Macks. So if you're familiar with the monument, that link there will take you to Donna Hauper. She's a Boston writer who wrote about the Macks and the Grays. So you can look at that article if you're interested. She used the library for her research. So while I'm looking around, like with the electric lights, I find this. So 1924, set the stage. Baseball, these kids today, they just don't have the smarts anymore. They don't care about the game. So this, again, is nothing new, this idea that, kids today are soft. They were saying it way back in 1924. So baseball was a real man's game in 1904, is what he's saying. You can file that under these kids today. So, by 1925, Mrs. Bauer became part owner of a new franchise with an old name called the Stogies. A Pittsburgh sports writer named Dick Guy created a league called the Mid-Atlantic, and he brought the Stogies back, and his two best players were from Pittsburgh. One was a center fielder named Art Rooney, and his brother Dan. You see them there and on my shirt, one-of-a-kind shirt. The Stogies in 1925 were not good. They won 39 games. They lost 62 games. They were almost in last place, like one game out of last. But the Rooney brothers were good. Art led the league in games played, runs, stolen bases, 58. He batted .369, and his brother batted .359 with 35 doubles and 18 home runs in the dead ball era. Dan became a priest, Father Silas, and Art bought a team called the Pirates, and they became a legendary football team. If you're interested, I did an interview with KDKA Fan Nation about, and there's the link for that, about the Rooneys and Wheeling. For some reason, they wanted to talk to me about it. And I said, yeah, I know, I'll talk about it. So, where was Bauer Field? Well, it's in Fulton, as you can see on the map there, and it's now called Miller Transfer Storage. And it's sad that all that baseball history right there by the creek is buried under all that. But that historic field, actually the New York Yankees were supposed to come to town in 1924. They actually got rained out. Mrs. Bauer's team was going to play them, and she wanted to play. And the Yankees said, we don't want Babe Ruth to break his leg in your muddy field, so they didn't play. But they did come back in 1933 to play at Fulton Park against the Stogies. And, the Babe was there. There he is. And everyone, is crowded. 10,000 people, kids hanging on the fence. Everyone wanted to see the Babe hit a home run. The only home run that day was hit by a young man named George Dickey, whose brother Bill was playing for the Yankees. And George played for the Wheeling Stogies. There is a gentleman here with us today who met Babe Ruth, believe it or not, in 1933. So I'm going to just quickly give him the mic. Y'all know Joe Gompers? Tell us about Babe.
One, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, well, I go back to 1924. First, I want to congratulate you, Sean, and as well as our old buddy Steve, for all the work you went to put this together. I think you've done a wonderful job, and I think you need a hand. But anyhow, at that time, I don't recall too much. But as years went on, a few years, I was very young, and I took to baseball, and I remember at that time, baseball was king. And boy, it was great among the kids, and all of them had baseball cards and all that stuff. And if you went up and down Market Street on when they had the World Series, they had ticker tapes on coming off the stores, and they would have a crowd of people out front, you know, and everybody was just having one heck of a good time. But anyhow, Bauers Park, or Stogie Park, as we knew it at that time, wasn't very far from our home. I lived on the lower part of McCulloch Street, right across from the trolley barn. And we would very often go over, walk through, down, across the bridge to the peninsula, and walk up the cemetery. And I can remember watching games from the top of the cemetery when I was very young with my uncle, and that would take us over. We had a perfect view. The only problem was the mosquitoes. They were like B-29s. The creek was like a sewer at that time. But anyhow, we would, I've got to let you know something about the park. Is everybody familiar with Miller's place there? You know where Miller's place is? Well, if you went down, took the National Road, and you were heading out like about 5 blocks from the bottom of the hill, the National Road was the Fulton Bank. And then it's the first large building you run into. And then right behind Fulton Bank was Fulton School. And there was a road that led from the National Road right next to Fulton Bank, and strange enough, it was called Bank Street. But it went from National Road right to the creek. And down to the creek was wedged the grandstand between Bank Street and the creek. And then, of course, first base came up Bank Street, and the third base line went up on the creek, followed the creek. Many times we try to get in all the time, we try to steal in. When we got a little older, we try to steal into the field. And many times we're caught. We were trying to get over the fence, up in the fence. And I can remember on one occasion, the restrooms were simply a series of outhouses behind the bleachers. And we found one time that a couple of the slats on the outhouse was loose, so we climbed through there to get in. It wasn't a pretty picture. And believe me, I got hell when I got home. But the worst part about it was we all got in, and then there wasn't a guard there waiting for us. But he felt sorry for us, and he overlooked us, and he said, "You can stay in." So we saw the game that day. But the main thing that I want to talk to you about was Babe Ruth. So we heard the Babe was coming to town, and you can't believe what a ride it was. We come out on the trolley, and the trolley was packed. I mean, it was jammed. We're talking about the Depression days. They always had enough money to get into a baseball game. But the trolley was jammed. It would stop right in front of the bank, and everybody would go run up Bank Street and try to get in line to get a ticket. And because Old Babe was in town, I remember we would ask everybody would be hollering now, "Hey, Babe, hit one over the school or the National Road," you know. And this was batting practice before the game. They would hit that ball, and it would go over the school, you know, God knows where it landed. And it went to the National Road. And then on one occasion, I remember he hit the ball right through one of the windows in the school. He got all the cheers in the world at that time. But now Babe was, and incidentally, that park was known as one of the best parks in West Virginia at that time. And it was the first, I understand, I don't know whether it's true or not, Sean, they have lights. That's what
there was an article about it. Yeah.
About 1930, 31, because I can remember Dad taking me to the ballpark to see the new lights that the Stogies had. But anyhow, Babe was, his mother died early, from what I understand, and I'm told that his father was a bartender and simply couldn't take care of it. So he asked the Severian brothers if they would kindly look after him and take care of him, and they did. And so when Babe came, and it so happened that the Severian brothers were in charge of Central High School at that time. So so when Babe came to Wheeling in 33, I remember that afternoon, I think it was the ninth game, and that afternoon, he stopped to see the Severian brothers at Central. Well, when he came into school, for all intents and purposes, school was out. Everybody wanted Babe's autograph, and he was such a gentle, big, like little bear, you know. He never looked like an athlete to me, and I remember he was so good to the little kids. He'd come into grade school, and all the little kids would jump on him, you know, and he'd put them on his lap and talk to them, and he must have given a million autographs. Everybody wanted to get 5 of them, and I don't have one. But I always looked upon him as more of a Santa Claus than a baseball player. But that was my experience with Babe. I don't want to take any more of your time, Sean. So I can thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so there's a picture of Babe at Fulton Field. The gentleman on the right is, let me get his name here. Well, the Yankees won the game 6-2. The gentleman on the right here played for the Stogies, and I can't find his name now. Sorry. In any event, there is a baseball that was allegedly signed by Ruth at Fulton, but I don't think it's authentic because he didn't usually at that stage in his career put the quotation marks. But the Stogies all signed the ball too. Someone had that ball here a few years ago in the program. I just want to mention a couple more. Rosie Glasscock, of course, from South Wheeling, played for the All-American Professional Women's Baseball League. Also a pitcher. She batted .262, won 94 out of 174 games as a pitcher. So pretty impressive. And then some other locals. This guy, 1960, beat the Yanks on a walk-off home run in the World Series Game 7. He was a Golden Glove winner, of course, numerous times, and was finally put in the Hall of Fame in 2001. There's Gene Freese. He's a sort of a journeyman from Wheeling. Played for numerous teams like the Reds, the Cardinals, the Phillies. And there's Phil Nuxie, Necro. 318 career victories, most by a knuckleballer, Hall of Fame, 1997, Blaine, Ohio. His brother Joe, also a knuckleballer, and George Brett from Glendale. 3,154 career hits, second most by any third baseman in Major League history, Hall of Fame, 1999. I wanted to mention also Lefty Hamilton, who Walter Ray Lefty Hamilton, who played for the Philadelphia Athletics. He played for the Bauers. He played for a lot of local teams. We have his picture up here, and we have an entire collection of his stuff. He was also in World War I at Camp Lee, in the archives here at the library. So now, let me introduce the person you came to hear and get off of here. Steve Novotney has been involved with the game of baseball since the moment his father gave him the bat boy uniform for the Elm Grove Lions when he was only 5 years old, and he's been in love with the game ever since. Steve played baseball through college, and he's written about baseball for more than 30 years. At one point, in fact, Steve served as the editor and general manager of the official newspaper of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and still refers to the gig as the dream come true job. These days, you can hear Steve in his 3-hour radio program each weekday afternoon on River Talk 100.1 and 100.9 FM. Please welcome Steve Novotney.
Can't follow you. Somebody meets Big Ruth, doesn't get his autograph. Always thought you were one of the smartest men I knew. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Sean mentioned all the different teams in Wheeling once upon a time ago. I can assure you that I never played for the Hunky Dories. As a matter of fact, that's the first time I've ever heard of the Hunky Dories. But of course, you grow up and you hear about the Wheeling Stogies and all that. But when he asked me to participate today, he said, just tell everybody why you love baseball so much. Because anybody who listens to me on the radio or reads my writing or knows me knows that even last night I was up way past an old guy's bedtime watching the Pittsburgh Pirates win. And I'll be doing the same damn thing tonight. Go Bucks. But when people ask me about baseball and Wheeling, there are memories that I have and things that I've always told people. You know, I've always told people that if you played on that big field at Patterson with those big concrete stands, because I always saw them in photos. You go into Figueretti's restaurant, the family's super cool about all those old photos, right? And one of them is Mr. Figueretti and one of those picture stances. And there are those stands. And it was. Mr. Vompers is right. Baseball was king in Wheeling back then. Okay, when Sean just mentioned, I got the Bat Boy uniform. It's the cutest picture, if I may say so. You know, my brother's team is surrounding me, and there I am. You can't even read Elm Grove across the chest anymore. The smelly old wool uniform was so old, but it was mine. And I finally got to play when kids wouldn't show up. And then after a couple of years in Elm Grove, there were politics even back then, not just smack talk. There was a lot of smack talk. I won't tell the ladies about that kind of stuff. But baseball's the best sport for smack talk. Okay, you can really insult somebody and they may not even know it. Oh yeah, it's great. But after a couple of years, all of a sudden, a nearby neighbor said, hey, we're starting a new baseball league. And we're going to call it the Mountaineer Baseball League because then every kid's going to get to play because the politics in Elm Grove, I don't know if it was true or not, was that they were only going to play the Elm Grove kids and not the kids from other towns. So a gentleman by the name of Ray Bauer, he started the Mountaineer League Baseball League with a whole lot of other people. Sean just talked about the Bauer family and the Bauer Field. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our very own Mrs. Bauer right here in the crowd, Rebecca Bauer, the wife, the widow of Ray Bauer. And he started that baseball league not because Vigo and not because of he had 3 sons whom he never coached. Okay, Robbie, Ricky, and Ronnie, he always kept moving up with me. He didn't want to coach his own kids. So Ray Bauer really changed Little League baseball in this town. So another big memory that I've always told people about is if you played for the adult Warwood Redbirds. Anybody remember the Redbirds with guys like Fred Gongola playing and the Glitch brothers and holy moly, Bo McConaughey. If you got to play with those guys, you made it. Okay, that was another thing. But if you're a high school kid and you went to Lindsley like I did, or Wheeling Central, Wheeling Park, or John Marshall, if you were invited to play for Wheeling Post 1, you were a stud baseball player in this town. Okay, they won championships like nobody's business. I was a member of 3 consecutive state championship teams, and I did nothing to win those things. Okay, you hear about people like JoJo Blah, okay, the legend who is Rick Mount, Joe Early, Jimbo LeMasters, Rick Hammers. I have them all written down. Raymond Parsons, Ron Stevens, Sean Jameson, Jason Fronapple. Those were guys who all played for Post 1 and won. And then after us, you heard about Heath Haynes and Kevin Tater and John Campbell and so on and so forth. Those are the guys who made me fall in love with the game of baseball. Because, as Mr. Gomper said again, baseball was still king in Wheeling. So as I continue on with what made, just thinking about it, the coaches also played a big part, like the Ray Bowers and the Bo McConaughey's or Gary Spriggs or Terry Depews. That stuff was all very major and all made baseball huge in this town. And by the way, Sean mentioned Belle Isle Ballpark on the tip of Wheeling Island, the northern tip. A sin was committed, ladies and gentlemen, when that was torn down. Because I can tell you, when I was a kid, that was Yankee Stadium. You got to play there, and the dugouts went down a couple of steps. My kids got to play there. And then we move away because, again, I published the official newspaper of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and all of a sudden we came home, and Michelle and I, my wife, took a ride on the north end of Wheeling Island to see our very first home, right? Everybody does that, right? And Belle Isle Ballpark was gone. How could you people let that happen? I like to say it wouldn't have happened. Now, as far as, publishing the official newspaper of the Pittsburgh Pirates, it's a dream come true. A gentleman, I'm sure you know whom I'm talking about, G. Ogden Nutting, asked me one day, hey, you want to publish the official newspaper of the Pittsburgh Pirates? I don't think he finished his sentence before I said yes. Well, yes, sir. And, one of the toughest things that happened was moving the kids to Pittsburgh. They didn't want to go. The first year, we put more miles on our cars bringing them home than games that they attended at Three Rivers Stadium back then. But then they figured it out. And both of my kids, thanks to that job opportunity, got to grow up not only in Three Rivers Stadium, but also PNC Park, which is, I've seen most of them, I've been in most of them, which is, no lie, the greatest big league ballpark there is in baseball, folks. Okay, I know, they don't win enough, I know. 2 100-loss seasons in a row, I know. I've said it myself how many times. If they're going to hold their money back, I'm going to hold mine back. Go to the park. Trust me, it's a gem. And I also got to be on Pittsburgh's ESPN radio for all those years. And I had a little show called Talkin' Bucko Baseball, and the #1 Cochran car dealership in Pittsburgh, the #1 Cochran Jack Wilson show. Jack was Jack Flash Wilson, a shortstop, number 12 for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he brought players on like Jason Kendall, Kevin Young, and Pokey Reese. Pokey Reese was one of the more original people that you'll ever know. also during those years, I got to meet and get to know Macks. I wouldn't trade that for the world. I got to be friends with Willie Stargell, Al Oliver, Dave Parker, Bob Robertson, Bill Robinson. I can go on and on and on. Again, this all goes to that supreme love of the game of baseball. One day when, and I'll talk to these ladies over here, one day as an editor and everything, when you're looking through stuff, you look through your subscription list. And I didn't realize that women were such fans of baseball. So I'm looking through, and half of the subscribers to this newspaper are women. And it made me remember that when I was a kid delivering newspapers, I could follow a Pittsburgh Pirates game on my bike because I would ride down Edgewood Street in Woodsdale and hear the game from all the front porches. And it wasn't just men sitting on those porches either, folks. You know, and I mean, I still have them. I don't know how many of y'all still have them, but remember those TV dinner tables? Again, I still have those. But they all had the TV dinner tables in front of them, and, you know, they're all eating, and there's the radio in the middle of them. And I'm just throwing papers, listening to the Pirates win yet another game, right? It was a great time. I also remember when my dad would go to work, my father, God bless him, 92 years old. Sorry he's not here today, but he says hi. I can remember he would drop me off, me, my brother, and my sister. He'd drop me off at St. Michael's on National Road. And all of a sudden, hour and a half later, my dad would show back up. And there's this intercom on the classroom wall, and it would say, "Attention, attention, Steve Novotney, please come to the principal's office." Again. And I'm like, okay. And the teacher, Mr. Novotney. So I go there. And it's because so many times my father today, like I said, 92, a devout Catholic. If you go to St. Mike's, there he is taking the collection every 11:30 Mass on Sundays. Devout Catholic. He would lie to nuns to take me to a game because he got tickets when he went to work that morning. So I don't think Sister Marlene ever knew. You know, my dad would, I mean, I'm in the principal's office. There's my dad. I'm thinking, man, what did I do this time? And I would hear my dad say, yeah, Sister Marlene, you know, this boy, he's got another one of them doctor's appointments I got. And I'd be like, I'd put my head down, right? I'd be like, yeah. I'd get into the car and my dad would throw me a pirate shirt on. He's like, let's go. Hello, doubleheader. So yeah, we did a lot of that. And of course, that caused me to really, really love the game of baseball. And I'll tell you why, and I'll end right here. I grew up here in Wheeling. And as you heard Sean go through the history of this team and that team, and you heard Mr. Gomper say, man, baseball was king. My love for the game of baseball isn't because I played. Well, maybe a little, because that was a lot of fun. And trophies were really big back then. It is because of who I played with, but it's also because of you. Okay, you guys made baseball #1 in this town. You made us kids love it. Okay, I didn't realize that when I was pitching for Lindsley and there were 300 people over here, that they were here to see us play. I thought they didn't have anything better to do. I mean, honestly, it's because of you, and it's still here. Trust me. I'll stop and watch any Little League game there is. And outside of the parents screaming about this and that, calm down, folks, by the way, or tell your kids to. It's still there. Michelle and I went by a game at Tunnel Green. And some years there's the East Wheeling Pirates, and other years there's not. It just depends on how many kids there are. Okay, when I played, there were two Mustangs, 2 Broncos, this and that, so many kids, and we know our population has dropped. But still to this day, The parents are there along the fences. The grandparents are probably out in the outfield because they don't want to get out, or they can't get out of the way of a ball anymore. But they're there because of the love of baseball. And, you know, it's pretty easy to say that, you know, you'll love the game and you'll be back in front of the TV again tonight to watch the Pirates. But it's true. I can't tell you how many people when I walked into this room told me, holy moly, it looks like you could still play the game. I just have that pitcher's body, that's all. Can't throw 90 anymore, so don't ask me. People do ask, and I say, sure, I'll do it one time if you help me pick it up and put it back on. But it's because of everybody in this room. Look at this crowd. Some of you may come every week because of how awesome this program is and good for you and good for Sean. And I say we clap for him right now because he does. But I also know a lot of you came here to hear the history of baseball and to hear from Mr. Gompers and for some reason hear me talk even more than I already do on a daily basis. But thank you for that love of this game. You can go ahead and collect on Sundays or whatever days they're playing football. Now, you can try and watch the NBA. You can watch anything you want. But baseball is still America's pastime. And everybody in this room is proof. Thanks, sir. One more. 3 to 6 p.m.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks everyone for coming. I make it a policy to only do historical programs so that those of you who actually remember things that happened, like Mr. Gompers here, can't challenge what I've said. So unless you go look it up yourself. But thanks for coming out. And like I said, if you want to know more, this is the book we have here at the library. And see you next week. Uh-oh, question.
There's people like Pete Chocolates here that has some members with him. I wonder, Sean, if you just take a few minutes to know what the audience wants to say something or add something. I certainly like to hear from you.
Pete, would you like to say something? Put you on the spot.
Well,
come on up. Tell us what you have. It's show and tell time.
well, I remember, I love baseball. Anybody that knows me knows that I love baseball. It's the only real sport because it's not governed by a clock. And I remember watching my first baseball game at Fulton Field with Henry Aaron hitting 2 home runs, Willie Stargell hitting 1, Clemente having a couple of hits, McCovey having a couple of doubles, and so on. So I fell in love with baseball at that time. I'm a big history guy also, and I know that Wheeling has produced some great baseball players, and one of those is Gene Freese. I'm a big baseball card collector, and I collected every Topps baseball card that was ever issued to Gene Freese, and they are in this frame. And like I talked to Steve earlier, I like the backs of baseball cards almost as much as the fronts, so you can see the backs as well, but they're hanging like this on the wall. And through my contacts, I knew that Gene was going to be in town at the Alpha at a certain time, so I grabbed all my baseball cards and went, not knowing who he was, but I kind of figured it out real quick. So I introduced myself, sat and talked with him and his brother George, and he was kind enough to sign every one of these cards. So this is one of my most prized possessions, Wheeling baseball.
Priest as a Father Pharaoh. He was a Father Pharaoh for years. He was an important umpire in the
Since do you want to say something?
Well, the only thing I say is that baseball is a very important part of my life. I'm going to be 75 pretty soon. I just remember at the age of about 6, I spent some quality time with my grandfather. He also was that day out in his conference and saw David play. So my grandfather was born in 1895. He was around a while. I'm talking about baseball. I just remember how many evenings sitting on the stairwell from first floor to second, listening to the radio. Bob Fritz and Rosie Roosevelt and him. One of the greatest injustices I think in the media world was the way the Pittsburgh market, I think Bob Fritz killed that man. I think you all, retired fans, going back to Steve, we all know that. And it really, baseball really, I mean, you heard Pete, you heard Steve. It is number one. Jay got me over here. I was a freshman at Wheeling Central, and I didn't feel a root ball until I played baseball. I remember going to Jay South Secondary School, once put the uniform on. All of you can think back to those 100 years of your childhood, never being and just know that baseball's touched you in a lot of different ways. And so this is a really special program. And Joe Knockers, I know well through the 90s, but it's very eloquent. Steve, I think Steve was being too humble. Steve was a phenomenal baseball player. And pitchers have to rely on one thing, their arms. If you have arm issues, your career kind of slows up. You might suggest, I know, I'm looking to repeat again, there's a really night who just the other day, pitched 6 Marvel Cities for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Peoples guy was very close to him. He was a stranger. You might want to call something about Michael Rose. I want you to please, if you're not a sports fan, check the news when you hear the Dodgers scores, because I think people think Michael could be really good. He's so young.
I had transitioned out of being an athletic trainer when Michael came into Wheels Park when he was a freshman. But I had Michael as a student. And I like to get to know my students, and he was not only a great baseball player, but he's a great young man. He is the kind of guy that you would want your daughter to bring home with her. I have a lot of signed baseball memorabilia on cards, pictures, baseballs. I have a Bob Feller signed baseball, a Henry Aaron signed baseball, Bob Friend and Vern Law, Pete Rose, and my most prized baseball possession is a autographed baseball from Michael Grove, because he was my student as a sophomore. So Michael's a great kid, and I'm sure he will do well moving forward, and I know we're all rooting for him.
Hey.
I just wanted to say, let's not forget the 4 umpires. We have a special umpire here in Bob Ryan in his 90s, and he's been around the bed a few times. But also somebody got a lot of PR in the Valley. Freese was a well-known umpire, Fulton Field from Mountain. And he's worked as a person. And he had a very interesting personality, but he was well-known and well-thought of as an umpire.
Really umpire. Any other thoughts? Make sure you take a look at these small pictures here from 53 and 54. Pretty cool. Yes. Oh, okay.
I would just like to make a mention of one of the idols of baseball in the early years, in the early 30s, and that was Hugh McConkey. And Hugh had a little store on the south side of 16th Street, which I considered a strip mall about that time. But anyhow, I can remember my dad taking me in there to get a nice green coat. some, only because he wanted to drink. They get the baseball player, every athlete in the county went to McConkey's store. And there would always be activities there. They had a ballroom, and they had, God knows what else, but anyway, there'd be a load of kids who would be always standing on the sidewalk, talking or doing their thing. And then later, when they put the ballpark in North Island, they had a statue of Hugh McConkey in the front of it. Whatever happened to the statue? It's there.
It's still there.
It's still there. So if you ever wanted the old ball field at the north end of the island, look for the Hugh McConkey statue right in front of the ball field. It's really interesting. It's the whole story.
Yeah, and the Macks, that was what his team was called, right? McConkey's team was called the Macks, for short.
Yes.
And they were rivals of Mrs. Bauer's team. They always played for the city championship.
I never knew much about his football or basketball team or baseball team, but I didn't know he was a much loved guy. I don't know whether he ever played or not.
And it was a big rivalry, and actually Mrs. Bauer refused to play them one year because it got so nasty after her team won the year before. So yeah, but it was all good fun.
I can only remember one guy that played for the Stogies, and that was Buddy Hackett. He was the first baseman, and he was the charm of the team. Everybody loved him, and he could run, play, throw. He could do anything, and he was probably one of the most outstanding players we had. And they say that the Rooney's played at that time. Did they play in the 30s?
1925, yeah.
That was 25. But did they play continuously till the 30s? I know they were there in 28.
They played for the Stogies only 1 year in 1925. They continued to play for Honus Wagner's traveling team into the late 20s. Honus Wagner had a barnstorming team that came to Wheeling too.
Can you tell me the origin of Stogie Park?
You mean Bauer Park? The Fulton Park?
The Fulton Park. How did it come about?
I don't know the origin. I just know that Mrs. Bauer's the one who made it a big park expansion. She put her money into it, so they could sort of call it the house that Ruth built, like the house that Ruth built.
No, I never knew how it came about,
It was there, from the mists of time. I don't know the origins, but she made it a big, minor league park. So that's a good place to end. And thank you all for coming, and thank you, Mr. Golfers and Steve and Pete and Tony and all of our speakers today. Go baseball, go Pirates.